Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning for the ones who are on the other side of the pond. We'll slowly let you in this webinar session today. My name is Alexandre Alaphilippe. I'm the Executive Director of EU DisinfoLab. We are a non-for-profit organization based in Brussels and countering disinformation. So welcome, everybody. Very happy to have all of you in our weekly webinar today. Today we're going to talk about Operation Overload, and we're going to come back on this because this operation has been known under different code names. We're very happy to have with us Guillaume Kuster today, the CEO of Check First, who has been hi Guillaume, who has been working on this investigation with the team at Check First and the team at Reset.tech. While we are slowly but surely starting and welcoming everybody, just a quick housekeeping reminder: we're not going to use a Q&A feature of Zoom. We're going to use Slido today, so you can actually click on the small scan the small QR code on slido.com and put the code disinfo. I'm going to ask, you don't see her, but I would like to thank my colleagues Maria and Henny, who are helping me and helping us today to organize this webinar. Maria, maybe we can show a bit the question. We're going to start with two short polls: where you're joining from today, and in which sector do you represent. So you will have the opportunity during the webinar to ask your questions directly. We'll pick them up at the end of the session. But please tell us where you are joining us from today, and we're going to take questions over there at the end of the presentation, which will be around 30 minutes. So EU DisinfoLab is a non-for-profit organization gathering knowledge and expertise on disinformation in Europe. Why we do organize these webinars? Because we like to give voice to experts, the voice and the floor to our awesome community, and to help them sharing knowledge, raise awareness around the great work that has been done by many of them. So we're going to talk today about Russian disinformation, foreign interference, and manipulation of information, also called labeled as FIMI. Please let us know which sector do you represent. And as a guest today, we have Guillaume Kuster from Check First. So Guillaume, you worked on Operation Overload. Operation Overload has been the exposure, the uncovering of a concerted effort to target fact checkers, newsrooms, and researchers worldwide, depleting their resources and exploiting credible information ecosystems to propagate the Kremlin's political agenda. So the operations tactics, and you're going to explain this to us, has been to flood media organization with anonymous emails containing links to fabricated content and anti-Ukraine narrative, with a particular focus on France and Germany. So we're going to see how actually fact checkers have been targeted by disinformers so they could give visibility to disinformation. And you actually conducted a collaboration with over 20 global media organizations. You analyzed, collected over 200 emails. You have assessed that almost 800 organizations and people were targeted by this operation on X and on emails. And we have some kind of strong elements that help us to understand this has been a coordinated operation. So Guillaume, thanks for accepting our invitation today and to present this work from Check First and Reset.tech. And Guillaume, the floor is yours for 30 minutes. I'm just mentioning that this webinar is recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel afterwards. So Guillaume, 30 minutes and the floor is yours. I think you can already share your screen.
Yeah, thank you very much for the comprehensive summary, Alex. And thanks for having me. So I'm here to talk about Operation Overload, which we published a report about that on the 4th of June, so a little over 2 weeks ago. I want to start by some acknowledgements, because as Alex just outlined, we were lucky enough to be able to collaborate with a bunch of European fact checkers and also outside of the borders of Europe. So here they are all listed. Thanks to them again. Thank you also to the Compress project and Dr. Hannes Marin, who helped us analyze the images that were sent by the pro-Russian operatives. And the authors of the reports are Alexandra Atanasova from Reset.tech, Amaury Desplingat from Check First, as well as Francesco Poldi and myself. So let's quickly say who we are. Check First is a software and methodologies company based in Finland. We specialize in the analysis of algorithmic recommendation. We monitor the way they spread information online, including problematic content and mis or disinformation. And Reset Tech doesn't really need an introduction anymore, but they are a non-profit organization based out of Berlin, addressing digital threats to democracy. A few words about where the idea for the report and the investigation came from. You probably have heard about the Operation Matryoshka. So in a nutshell, AFP and Antibot for Navalny published in January about an operation they had seen on X. And we later found out that that Matryoshka operation was only a part of a broader operation, hence the change of name, and that's why we call it Operation Overload, because one of the tactics that is used is, as Alex mentioned, to flood newsrooms and fact checkers with mentions and fake content. So what are we talking about? Here are a few examples of the kind of fake content that was distributed to fact checkers in newsrooms. I'm going to elaborate on the different ways and tactics that we use to do so. But as you can see, there are fake content that are detrimental to Ukraine. You would find some other ones detrimental to the French President Emmanuel Macron and to Ukrainian refugees in Germany, so on and so forth. So aligned with pro-Russian or Russian interests. So the way we had the idea to start that, after reading after Matryoshka, we started to receive emails with subject lines such as the ones you see on screen, and started to be a bit curious about that and asked around if we had other colleagues that also received these emails, because they were all pointing at Telegram or X or some, in some occurrences, to Russian controlled or pro-Russian controlled websites. So that's when we started to ask EU DisinfoLab for help into coordinating a platform to talk to other fact checkers, and that happened thanks to them. The main targets of the operation are these countries here: France, Germany, and to a lesser extent Italy, but mainly Ukraine. And the people that were targeted and mentioned on X or sent emails to were, these categories you see on screen, alongside the newsrooms and the fact checkers. For the purposes of the report, we analyzed over 300 different emails. We could establish that more than 800 organizations were targeted. And on X, the mentions in between the direct targets and the collateral targets were nearly 3,000. So let's talk about the goals of the operation. Why do they take the time and energy to contact fact checkers? We can make assumptions for establishing these goals, but we also have some indications and direct interaction with the instigators. So what you're seeing on screen is an email exchange in between one of the fact checkers who followed up with the perpetrators. And the answer from the perps was, well, we'd like that content to be spread, across really in a maximal way. So that, is a clear indication that one of the goals of the operation is to expose the fake narratives through debunks. So even if they are debunked by fact checkers, just the fact that they are published somewhere, even with a big red cross on top of it, is significant to them. So we could identify a few of the goals. You can see them on screen. I'm not going to spend too much time, but basically it's, having fact checkers and newsroom waste time fact checking stuff that wasn't really present online massively, and also benefit from a additional exposition of the fake narratives that were created for the purposes of the operation. So let's start with the tip of the iceberg, which are the emails received by fact checkers and newsrooms. They all look the same. They all come from different Gmail accounts, which were purposefully created for the operation, always the same type of Gmail account, first name, surname, and a number. And they would have a similar subject line as I showed you earlier, a short sentence, pointing at an alarmed citizen really wanting journalists to verify something that they had seen on pro-Russian Telegram channels or websites, and then a bunch of links. So that's the typical format of these emails. And that operation is ongoing. I mean, we just today, like half an hour before that webinar started, received some more of these emails that can be linked to the same operation. What's quite remarkable is the timing. There are a few other remarkable aspects. So they do observe the news cycle in their target countries, and they do create fake content that relates to the current news cycle. So there's a lot of topics about social unrest when it was the case, like the farmers' protests in France. In the spring, of course, the upcoming Olympics are also quite a typical topic for them. So they do observe the news cycle and produce content related to that with a quite short turnover in terms of content production. So looking at the origins, at the technical origins of the emails, we could not attribute the operation to any particular group of people. All we can say is that they are spreading pro-Russian misinformation and disinformation. The fact that they use Gmail addresses prevents us from seeing the IP addresses from which the emails were sent, but we could gather some clues. Sometimes they make mistake. And here you have a reading of the database that we use for the data collection for the purposes of the investigation. You can see that they had sent to just one fact checker a body of an email in Russian, and it reads exactly the same as another one that was sent more widely to other fact checkers with the same content but in English. So it's a hint of the origin of it. Just to if you receive any of these emails, if you're a journalist or fact checkers, we could not establish any risk associated with opening attachments to the emails. Sometimes they sent images or videos directly in the email, and so far they were not dangerous, but always exercise caution and handle them with care if you should receive any. Looking at the dissemination tactics, so that is really probably one of the most interesting aspects of the operation. What they try to do is to create an alternative sense of reality where journalists are invited to believe that the fake content is really widely spread, when in fact it was only disseminated on channels that are controlled by the perpetrators. So the channels they use are mainly these three ones: Telegram, X, and the Portal Combat Network, that which was identified by the French Vigilum agency, which is a bunch of fake news media websites, if you will, automatically publishing in the local language disinformation in heaps, really big quantities of articles. So if we take a look at Telegram, we've identified 78 channels involved where that content was posted by the perps. We could analyze it, and also through some quite elaborate technique, join posts per account. So what I mean is that we could identify that a few people posted across many different channels the same content. Basically, we could find a signature that associates a particular user with an image. So even if you upload the same file as with the same account on two different channels, they wouldn't look the same. So that's one technique that enabled us to establish that just a few people actually widely spread that content on many different Telegram channels. In total, we analyzed that amount of pods and amplification. So, if you're interested, all that information is present in the report. Looking at another channel for dissemination, X, of course. So here also, we've identified quite a number of accounts involved, 90 accounts. We saw that over 200 fact checkers were literally pinged, so mentioned, sent content to on the platform in 75 countries. If we look at the data, you can see the typology of the people which were targeted, mainly media and fact checkers, and then to a lesser extent, governments, international organizations, and institutions. They would reply to tweets from these accounts, mentioning everybody that was mentioned in the original tweet. So that's the concept of direct targets and collaterals, but everybody would be exposed to the fake content. As for the narratives, again, they are using constantly the content that is sticking to the news cycle. And they have an interesting process because they would use the same accounts to post about different narratives, but they would have a technique where they would ping, seed the content, rinse, which means post about something else with the same account, and then start again with a different narrative. Also, you can read more about that in the report. Looking at the accounts that were used for dissemination, some of them were recently created, we think purposefully, but we also saw another group of accounts which were identified earlier as seeding pro-Russian disinformation. So both types of accounts were used. Looking at X's action against these accounts, we've established during the investigation period that 70% of the accounts remained active. And the remaining 30% were shadow banned. And just on a side note, the shadow banning is not the best technique because it prevents researchers from finding these accounts or further accounts. So it might be useful to think about other alternatives to exert sanctions on the side of X. Right. So that's for basically the way content is disseminated, but there's more, and I'm just gonna try to go through and give you the most we can in the time we have. So when we look at the content itself, the first observation we can make is that the quality of the content, both technical quality, but also the fact that they know local cultural codes, is quite remarkable. It would take some time to assess if it's a fake or not. When you first see these fakes, it's not obvious. If you are relatively detached from the narrative, technically it's well executed, and also, to be frank, some of them made us laugh because they use cultural codes that talk to us. But as the categories go, we have like three big categories, which are graffitis, videos, and screenshots of either news websites, which are fabricated, or fake Instagram stories, screenshots, stuff like that. And the more you go further on the timeline, the more content was created. So that's, over the investigation period, what we could measure. There was a clear acceleration towards the end of the timeline, which is last April, but Again, this operation is ongoing, and we can still see frequently these outreach. Just yesterday, we had 2. This morning, another one came in, and we've had everyday emails from the same operation. Looking at the videos, so what they do is they impersonate media brands, and they do so using more of internationally recognized brands such as Euronews, France 24, the international French radio RFI, or the BBC. So here's a chart to let you know which ones were impersonated the most. And if you look at the breakdown by country, you can see that the media from France were the most impersonated in equality with the American ones, followed closely by Germany, and more generally European countries. So let's show you some, because you can appreciate for yourself how well made they are. Looking at the graffitis, as you can see, they don't look bad at all. These ones are a quick selection from quite typical narratives that would be treated by the graffitis. So the one you can see on the bottom left with the Simpson fish, then this one came a few days after an NGO in France tested independently the quality of the Seine River, in which some Olympic swimming competitions are supposed to occur, basically ringing the bell saying the water is not good enough. So a few days after that, they just used the Simpson fish, which swims in nuclear wastewaters in the TV series, saying that the Seine River is all clean. There's another one, impersonating Emmanuel Macron in the style of an actual graffiti artist in France. But most of the graffitis would be against Ukraine, trying to turn it into ridicule, or trying to present Ukrainians as wanting to get rich with Western money by collecting themselves the funds that are supposed to go into the war efforts. So let's give you a few examples. As you can see, it sticks to the news cycle. In April, there was quite a sizable farmers' protest in France, and you can read April 2024 on the graph, with a Macron struggling to keep farmers in control, and that is sticking to the news cycle. Another example is using popular culture references, like the famous Spider-Man meme, but in that case, it's used to show Europeans and Americans not being able to decide who should support Ukraine. Another one is, we just talked about this one, so the fish on the bank on the Seine River. And of course, I mean, none of these graffitis exist in real life. This one is quite interesting because on the left side of the screen, you can see a fake with a signature. And that signature is the one of an actual French artist, which is known to be favorable to conspiracy theories, and also was prosecuted for an anti-Semitic tag that he did in southern France. So the perps are aware of the existence of that guy, creating graffitis in his style, even using his signature to kind of surf on that gray area in people's mind, and make it appear as a real graffiti. So we could establish that the graffitis were fake thanks to the Compress project. So just to give you a glimpse on how that works, we could see indications of a forgery in 42 of the 53 graffitis. And that's the kind of tools that the University of Ghent has developed, with different algorithms being able to detect image manipulation. So none of them are 100% reliable, but they have multiple ones. And when you cross-reference them, that gives you a better sense of the types of manipulation that could have occurred. So basically, you would get a score of possible forgery, and the higher the score, the higher the likelihood of the image having been modified is. Something to note about the graffiti is also, speaking about how elaborate it is, they would have pictures taken in Paris, for instance, from different angles, and they would create, superimpose these graffitis on each of these pictures from the same wall, which means that, that suggests that they really want to reinforce the idea that the graffiti exists in real life when it doesn't, really, because they provide fact checkers and journalists with pictures coming from different angles. So you can screenshot that if you want to read more about the considerations. Basically, we do emphasize the fact that there are limitations in using these tools. There are one good tool or set of tools to get impressions, but there's no silver bullets in the realm of image analysis. So what the researcher at the University of Ghent told us, and that is something that we were curious about, was giving his assessment of the likelihood of generative AI being used for the creation of that content. And Dr. Hannes Marin doesn't think generative AI was used, but it was rather a more traditional editing software that we use, such as Photoshop. So again, looking at the different types, you can see starting from the graffiti, they create a bunch of other fake content. So that would be like creation of fake news articles, like the one from the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. So they would create tweets around that. And here you can see an example of the multiple angles from which the pictures have been taken. They would post on social networks other than X and Telegram, and on websites they do control. So that is a technique we call content amalgamation. And basically the idea is to, once the fake is created and you make, other fakes inspired or reporting about the original fake, you would spread that across channels you control, and then that gives an existence online and links to these different pieces of content, so that you can populate an email with a set of links, and creating the impression for the journalist or the fact checker is going to open the email that thing is really everywhere and that action must be taken. So it's quite remarkable to see how they did that. And one of the ideas that reinforces our hypothesis that they really want fact checkers to publish debunks is that graph. So what does it tell us? That graph, everything you see in gray are pieces of content posted on channels controlled by the propagandists. So you can see on the timeline, in between day 1 and 2 of the operation, there's like, dozens of these fakes that are related to the same narrative that are posted online. And then the first fact checks occurred, and we could find 250 legitimate actual fact checks that can be linked to the operation. So journalists across Europe, mostly in Eastern Europe, by the way, fact-checking these pieces of content. So when you look at the top of that little vertical bar, when you see red dots, that's when the fact checks occurs, and you can see for yourself that the content dissemination from the propagandist stops, only to come back a few weeks later, maybe trying again to infuse the same idea in people's minds. So that also indicates that, once they get what they want, they stop, which means that what they want can be interpreted as a publication of the fact check. About the videos, so I talked about the impersonation of media, which also is of good quality. They would really stick to the graphical layout of and the brand identities of the media they impersonate. You can see some from the continuous news channel BFM TV in France, Bayerische Rundfunk in Germany, Deutsche Welle also in Germany, and they would just either collect a bunch of video clips from different news channels and superimpose the layout or the brand and the identity of one media, or they would take an existing one and just modify 1 or 2 shots to insert their idea. There was one last week, for instance, about There was an attack on a Chanel boutique in Paris when a car destroyed the main door and thieves ran away. The French newspaper Le Figaro did a video on that. They just reused the same video, replacing 2 shots to say that video surveillance had identified the perp and that he was a 27-year-old Ukrainian refugee, which of course is entirely false. So again, that demonstrates that they are quite, gifted in a way into their ability to replicate videos. I had a conversation with a journalist from RFI, so Radio France Internationale, the other day, and he said sometimes their videos are better than ours, technically. So that is telling. Here you can see like which narratives are being talked about. So it's mainly anti-Ukraine. In a lighter shade of blue, you can see it's against the Olympic Games upcoming in Paris, loosely tied to the bedbugs story. And you can see for yourself the other topics, but mainly anti-Zelensky and anti-Ukrainian refugees in European countries. That's an example of a bunch of videos with German branding, fake stories about, how the behavior of Ukrainian refugees is reprehensible in Germany. So that's one of the narratives. This one is quite interesting. We fact-checked it. So the image that was used didn't come from a media organization. So this one is supposed to be a Ukrainian refugee that tried to steal fishes from an aquarium, public aquarium. But the picture was taken from a Russian dating site, as you can see on the right. Okay, so here are some figures about the manipulated video that we had identified. There's more coming every week. We can see more. The video is focused mostly on France and Germany. Here's a few words about some other types of fake content. So as mentioned earlier, fake articles or fake Instagram stories from the news media. And looking at the future, as mentioned, the operation is still ongoing, which means that caution still has to be exerted by fact checkers and journalists. Learn how to recognize the emails and to collect them for, investigation purposes, for looking at the entire operation as a whole, but ignore them for your regular fact checks. You would be losing time if you are in such a position. As for what to expect next, of course, we have some major events. So there's the snap surprise election in France coming up at the end of the month. There's the currently ongoing Euro 2024. Of course, there are the Paris Olympics coming up. So we can be cautious and wary of an acceleration of the spread of that type of content on Telegram X, the channels they do control. But there is something particularly nasty that's happening these days. Right after we published the report, we noticed that they started to associate the fake content on X with QR codes. So we put a big do not scan label on this one to prevent anyone to do that. That is quite dangerous because that QR code links to a URL shortening service. So that means that the link behind the QR code can be changed. The first version of that link was not pointing to any online place, but it can potentially be an attack vector, either to send malware or to even it could be a zero-day attack, so people trying to take control of your phone without you noticing. So that is something that we really do ring the alarm bell on this one. Do not scan random QR code. It's the same thing as clicking on an unknown link in an email, so exert caution there. That's it for the Operation Overload in a nutshell. I think I just did 30 sharp, Alex, and I'm open to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guillaume. If it's a nutshell, it's a big nutshell because the operation is quite complex, and we're going to take questions. And we already received many questions on the Slido. So as a reminder, we'll take questions on Slido to slido.com. You can put the code disinfo, or you can also put the hashtag here. So I'm going to start maybe with I think the main question that is behind overload is like, why targeting journalists and fact checkers? Like, is it more effective than target public authentic audiences directly on social media? If you can reach to 1 million people using Facebook ads, why would you target fact checkers, Guillaume?
Why not? But so let's make a few hypotheses. We think that one of the reasons they did that is because they had to be more creative following the first signs of the application of the DSA and more regulation being imposed on platforms. And maybe it's not that easy anymore to post massively disinformation online without being catched or deplatformed quickly. So using or trying to use fact checkers and journalists as a vector is an alternative way to get your message out to a broad audience. Also, it can be a way to get your message out to an audience which doesn't use social media that much, because there's the possibility to get TV stories about that and other kind of treatment as just online content. So we think there are, two things. One, have the fact checkers and the journalists waste time and resources fact checking content that is not massively widespread instead of doing something else. They also know that there's more and more newsrooms which have fact checking departments, which have weekly or even sometimes daily segments that needs to be filled, and that creates an opportunity to kind of provide the fact checkers with the material and have a say and control some of the narratives and some of the content that is being spread. And some fact checkers are conscious of that and are trying to rethink their position. Libération, for instance, when they covered overload, they stated that in the article, being humble about that and saying maybe we have to think twice about covering something.
So while you have become aware of the strategy as outlined, have you seen other portals or media entities falling for it?
We've seen 250 individual fact checks. Yes, there were other, legitimate media organizations and fact-checking organizations that fell for it, especially in the beginning. When you look at, and these are from everywhere on the map, but with more of those in Eastern Europe and particularly in Ukraine. So yes, some media's organizations fell for it, but also through the coordination enabled by EU DisinfoLab, we could spread the word early on, and that is something we did together, organizing a webinar while we were investigating and to share our first findings and issue a warning to them, spread the word. And of course, since the report has been out, then other media organizations are also taking a look at it seriously and thinking twice about before fact checking something that looks like it could be related to that operation.
I'm just building on the question, Guillaume. Do you think, because it's something also that we've seen in other operations, like in Bad Sources or Indian Chronicles, we've seen how like the content that is produced in Europe or in the US is then re-imported and reused to justify some positions or to justify some propaganda inside the country of origin. So in that case, do you think that there is some kind of an intent to actually get also some kind of proof of success or capacity to import back this kind of content
It's
to
all
the country of origin?
Yeah. It's all interpretation and conjecture at this stage. But yes, I see where you're going with it, because one of the reasons why internationally recognized brands such as Euronews or France 24 are used might be because they are known in Russia, for instance, and that there might be a way to I mean, when you pay someone to produce that content, you want to get a better bang for your buck. So why not reuse it internally and use it not to say, there's something not going well in your country in France, but also saying, look at how stupid Westerners are, which, we've seen stories about, Europeans being forced to eat insects because there were meat shortages. It's true that we have like cricket farms and we do harvest that and we do snack bars with it in Europe, and there's quite a lot in Finland if you want to know. But it's in no way because there's a meat shortage that we have that. So. But yes, I can see a scenario where these assets are reused for Russian-speaking populations, but also for African populations. The France bashing is something that is always very popular in countries where Russians are present, like in the Republic of Central Africa or Mali or Burkina Faso or Niger. So it might be reused there as well.
Thanks. Let's go back to the content. We have a question from Lorenzo. Do you have any reason to believe that the text included in the emails was generated through the help of LLMs, of large language models? So basically, you've shown how this text might have been translated. Do you think ChatGPT or other kind of LLMs have been used to do this?
We didn't reach any conclusive evidence there, but we have good hints at some of the text being translated by specific LLMs, because we could match exactly one translation reusing specific version of an LLM, but we couldn't repeat that enough times to be able to affirm that it was the case. But there are hints that it might be one of the tactics or tools that they had used.
Thank you. And adding to the LLM questions, and I think it's very interesting because for those who did not have the chance to do this, but like for the first time 2 weeks ago, OpenAI released a report, a threat report on how ChatGPT has been used in different operations, and including doppelganger, spamouflage. And it has been noticed by Ben Nemo's team that yes, these tools, these Gen AI tools are used to generate whether translation of content, summarization of content to create Facebook posts. So this putting to the next question, like adding to the LLM questions, how easy has it already become, or how easy will it be to mass produce such content in the coming months? And we have US elections now at the corner of the fall.
Very. I mean, there's not much to say there. Yes, it's very easy and it's accessible to almost anyone.
Yeah. The question here, as we also need to be very of, is like the question of production of content is of course very important, but the question of distribution of this content will also be crucial. So you can have the best translation content ever if you don't have, like, this operation has been successful not that much because of the content it created, but also by its capacity to target fact checkers, to send emails, to actually abuse the fact that we don't know how much a piece of news is viewed. So giving the impression to fact checkers that this is important, and reinforcing this kind of bias of need to fact check something that might be only triggered by 3,000 accounts based in Kazakhstan. So also putting here the thing about, we have concerns about how Gen AI will be able to generate that amount of text at a very high speed and for a very cheap price. And at the same time, we also need to address the issues of the platforms on how this content can be distributed to mass audiences or targeted to specific audiences that can then reach a higher audience, of course. A question from Samuel Morse, inventor of Telegraph. Can you share a bit more about your Telegram methodology? Because it looks very interesting. And have you been able to show that this could represent coordinated inauthentic behavior? There is an error here from Samuel, coordinated inauthentic behavior into Telegram.
So what we did is we identified what we call cross-venue collisions. So What that means is when you have the same person posting the same image in different Telegram channels, we can prove that it was the same account which posted it, or the original account. And we can also see in which channels they are active. So that led us to the conclusion of a few accounts being able to widely disseminate content on different Telegram channels. The technique is quite elaborate, so I would advise you, Samuel, to go to that section, the report. I'm sure we'll find a way to share a link in the chat before the end of the call.
Thank you. I think that might be relevant for other stakeholders that want to apply this methodology. I'm just here. Jonathan has a question like, could you advise how one can learn to use OSINT resources? Is there a school for this? A few community updates. Digital Sherlocks are opening applications today, Jonathan. So really encourage you to go look at the Digital Sherlocks. There are many online trainings available. So there are different schools and different programs that can help you to do this. Bellingcat also offers trainings. So good luck, Jonathan, going into the OSINT rabbit hole. So on the question of the QR code, you showed this that happened recently. So there has been a QR code. Lots of questions. What does this QR code mean? How is it an evolution of this campaign? This person says it seems to be an image with an image.
Oh, she's right. Yeah. But it's for the time, what is concerning to us. So we couldn't identify, and we were helped into that matter by people that know much more about us about that than we do in a collaborative effort, and effectively at the time being. It doesn't lead to anything online, but the URL itself is a very long URL that contains an image that is partially altered. We made the same conclusion, so kudos for making it so fast. What is concerning is the fact that that URL is editable. They're using tinyURL, which is a URL shortening service. So the same QR code can still exist online, unaltered, but what it does can change. And we noticed this morning that it changed for the first time since we detected it quite a few times, like 4 or 5 times this morning. The investigation is under progress, so I have no conclusions to share with you yet. But the real risk is to have a bunch of these QR code like spread massively. One alternative way of thinking is also to say, okay, we have the year 2024 ongoing, we're going to have the Paris Olympics, and massive numbers of people on the streets in Paris and in German cities. These QR codes could also exist in the real world. So we just ask people to exert caution and to not scan random QR codes because you can't know what they are, and they could be potentially very dangerous to you. Looking at the base 64 coded image, the one we found is altered in some portions of the image. That could lead to a piece of malware being hidden in the image, for instance. I'm not saying it's the case, but it's one possibility. And again, they can replace that URL to anything else. So it's the same thing as clicking on an unknown link, which you wouldn't do opening an email. So don't do it with a QR code.
Yes, I think that's a bit additional cautious here. Yes, don't scan QR codes. QR code is actually a powerful tool for hacking because you don't have the visibility of where you can be led. You're also on your phone, so you have also less checking capacity. So advice of caution here: always be cautious when you actually scan QR codes. And what is also worrying is that kind of potential to update the attack and to also hide different capacities. We have another question, which is going back maybe a bit to the question of like, I would say, attribution. In the graphic, you showed that when Russian media was also impersonated. So I'm going to ask the question: if a Russian media is impersonated, why Russia would do that?
Well, it could be, you know, just to achieve some internal propaganda goals. Maybe the Russian media wasn't aligned enough with the goals of the propagandists. But a side note on the typology of the media which were impersonated, we couldn't detect any media organizations being friendly to the far right, for instance. You could see a lot of media organizations from the mainstream, but there are many different types of media in France, and you know, many of them were impersonated, but not CNews, which is often classified as favorable to the far right. So there might be also some ideas that can be driven from that.
Maybe an additional question, Guillaume, because this operation, you labeled it overload. You said it's Matryoshka on steroids. Matryoshka has also been an important operation. We've seen also Matryoshka had some kind of links in terms of content or in terms of TTPs, in terms of tactics with the doppelganger operation. So in that case, no website, but like clones of videos using the branding of website, which is something that was seen also at the origin of doppelganger. Do you have any assessment on how this operation is conducted? Do you think overload is a doppelganger team, is a side operation? Do you have any assessment? Do you have any information there on like attribution?
It's very difficult to do that, as you know, because we have no access to the organization charts of these people. There are probably different teams involved, but I cannot remove the probably. We don't know. And also the names that we put on these operations, I mean, you know, Antibot for Navalny dubbed it Matryoshka, we dubbed it Overload. We could see that Matryoshka was the X component of a larger operation. That's why we changed the name. But looking at, you know, command and control for that kind of operations, how many levels there are in the organizations in terms of contractors and subcontractors, or even administrations or services, or you know, divisions of the army, I don't know. So what we can say is that it's active, they are competent and skilled. They do have targets, mainly France, Germany, and of course, Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees. And they are unfolding a plan to turn people against others, which the French, of which I am, do very much on their own at the moment, but without the help of disinformation. But we can see that there's a plan being executed, and they do stick to some venues, some topics and themes in the content they do produce. So it is clearly organized. By whom? We can say it's pro-Russian. We don't have any technical way to go to them or to identify them. Viginum, the French agency taking care about foreign influence in France, they published a report a few days after overload on Matryoshka, and kindly quoting us in their report, they brought some more information about Telegram, so that might be of interest to the ones who asked the questions about Telegram, and they provided more information about different aspects that we did not cover, but it seems to be all tied in the same operation. But who's to say that there's not something that we haven't seen yet?
Okay, so we've seen basically two main platforms being used there to online intermediaries. One is not a platform at the or develop at the sense of the regulation, but so X for the fake accounts, and Telegram as also hosting of initial content. So did you reach out to X? Did you reach out to Telegram also maybe? And what the assessment? Do you know any kind of actions they've been taking?
We've reached out to X, given the threat posed by the QR codes, quite swiftly, and they acted also quite swiftly. So within the same day, they have removed the tweets that we had pointed them at. And that is really because of the potential danger of the QR codes. That didn't stop the perpetrators from trying again, as we could see more of these QR codes flying around in the past days. So as for Telegram, if you have a contact point, I'll take it.
Okay, so call to good people and good volunteers here, and maybe we had the Belgian regulator, which will be in charge in DSC of Telegram, so maybe they have some direct contact. I don't know if they are with us today. Thank you, Guillaume, for taking all of these questions, and thank you, everybody. So we organize this webinar on a weekly basis recently. So we have a next webinar next week on using Gen AI for the production, spread, and detection of disinformation. So both on supporting and countering disinformation. So we'll have some insights and innovations with Kalina Boncheva from the University of Sheffield and from the EU project Vera AI. On the 4th of July, we'll have something about brand disinformation and navigating the new frontiers about what is brand disinformation with Rafi Mendelson from Siabra. We'll have other webinars going out also very soon, so you'll receive a small email about the next webinars. I'm also taking this opportunity to announce that we're going to release the draft program of the EU DisinfoLab conference probably in a few minutes. So stay close to your emails, and if you haven't take your ticket yet, feel free to book it ASAP, because it seems they are quite popular these days. So book your ticket as soon as possible. We'll have some kind of, you'll also receive a questionnaire to read the webinars. Feel free to suggest topics for the future ones and let us know what you think about everything. That being said, thank you, everybody, for your participation and for your many questions today. Thank you, Guillaume, for sending the link to Check First, and congratulations to you and Alexandra from Reset.tech. We'll see us around very soon. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.